Victoria frowned as she looked at her phone. An important file was missing from the company's internal system. She had searched for it several times and couldn't understand what had happened. She knew she had submitted it. She knew it had been there. Not wanting anxiety to take over, she called her friend and prayer partner, Logan. "Hey, Logan, can you pray with me for a minute?" she said. "Of course," he replied. Logan offered a brief prayer asking God to give Victoria peace, wisdom, and favor as she searched for the missing file. "Amen," Victoria said softly. Feeling calmer than before, she ended the call and returned to her search, trusting that everything would work out. Later that evening, Victoria stood before the mirror, getting ready for her date with Logan. As she brushed her hair and made her final preparations, her thoughts drifted to him. Somewhere along the way, the plumber had become much more than the man who fixed her sink. He had become a trusted friend. He had been there when she lost her cousin. He had prayed with her through difficult moments, time and time again. Whenever life seemed overwhelming, Logan always seemed to know exactly what to say. He encouraged her, lifted her spirits, and reminded her that she was never facing life's challenges alone. A small smile crossed her face. Tonight would be different. Tonight they weren't meeting as customer and a plumber. They weren't simply meeting as friends. Tonight was a date. As she slipped into her favorite dress and gave herself one final look in the mirror, she couldn't help but to wonder where all of this was leading. Could there be something more between them? Only time could tell. Victoria smiled, picked up her purse, and headed to the door. "Lord, here we go again," she said with a nervous smile. Feeling beautiful, confident, and ready for whatever the night might bring, Victoria left to meet Logan at the restaurant. Just as Victoria arrived at the restaurant, she noticed Logan pulling into the parking lot. A smile crossed her face. Apparently, they were both right on time. After parking their vehicles, they made their way inside and were escorted to their table together. As they approached their seats, Logan stopped for a moment and simply looked at her. "Wow," he said with a smile. "You look beautiful tonight." Victoria felt her cheeks warm. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. "Thank you," she finally managed. As they stood there, waiting to be seated, Victoria found herself seeing Logan a little differently than she ever had before. Somewhere between fixing a broken sink, praying her through difficult days, encouraging her through the loss of her cousin, and reminding her to trust God, she had never stopped long enough to notice just how handsome he was. But after everything that had happened with Nash, she wasn't interested in appearances. She wasn't interested in relationships. Right now, she wasn't interested in anything. Looks alone no longer impressed her. What mattered to her was character, integrity, faith, a heart after God. And that was how she had always viewed Logan. But Logan was her friend, her prayer partner, an intercessor, a man who genuinely cared. Still, as she looked across the table at him, Victoria couldn't deny one simple fact. The plumber was a very good looking man. Quickly gathering her thoughts, she smiled and took her seat, determined not to let her imagination get the best of her. Tonight was just about dinner. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. As the evening went on, the conversation flowed effortlessly between them. They laughed, shared stories, and talked about everything from work to faith and the unexpected turns life sometimes takes. For the first time in a long time, Victoria found herself completely relaxed. There was no pressure, no pretending, no trying to impress each other, just two friends enjoying each other's company. As she listened to Logan talk, Victoria couldn't help but to notice how easy it was to be around him. He had a way of making her feel comfortable, heard, and understood. Across the table, Logan smiled as Victoria laughed at one of his stories, and for a moment, neither of them seemed concerned about tomorrow. The worries of work, the challenges of life, and the burdens they had both carried felt a little lighter that afternoon. But somewhere between the laughter and the conversation and the comfortable silence, something began to change. For months they had been friends, prayer partners, a source of encouragement for one another. Yet now both of them were becoming aware of feelings that went beyond friendship and prayer. Neither one said anything, neither one rushed the moment, but they could feel it. Something new was beginning to grow between them, and for the first time, neither of them were afraid to see where it might lead. As they stepped out of the restaurant, neither of them seemed in a hurry for the evening to end. The dinner had been everything they hoped it would be, and more. They had laughed, shared stories, encouraged one another, and somehow managed to lose track of time. What began as a simple dinner between friends had turned into one of the most enjoyable evenings either of them had experienced in a long time. As they walked toward the parking lot, Victoria found herself smiling more than usual. Inside, butterflies danced in her stomach, and she couldn't remember the last time she had felt this comfortable with someone. Logan glanced over at her and said something that immediately brought a blush to her face. Victoria lowered her eyes and laughed softly, shaking her head as she tried to hide her smile. "There you go again," she said. "What?" Logan replied with a grin. "You always know the right thing to say." They stood beside their cars for a few moments, neither one quite ready to say goodbye. Finally, Logan smiled and said, "How about we meet up before work on Monday?" Victoria nodded. "I'd like that." With that, they promised to see one another again before the start of the work week. As they headed to their separate vehicles, both carried the same thought home with them. Somewhere along the way, friendship had quietly become something more, and neither of them was disappointed about it. Later that night, Victoria sat alone in her secret place. The laughter from dinner had faded. The butterflies were still there, but now they were competing with something else: fear. She leaned back and let out a deep sigh. "Lord, what am I doing?" Just a few hours earlier, she had enjoyed one of the best evenings she could remember. She and Logan had laughed together, talked for hours, and genuinely enjoyed one another's company. But now reality was setting in. Her thoughts began racing. What if this turns into something more? What if I let my guard down? What if I get hurt again? Victoria lowered her head. She had worked hard to heal from disappointment, hard to rebuild herself again, hard to trust again. The last thing she wanted was another broken heart. God, I like him, she admitted quietly. I really do. The words hung in the air, but I don't know if I'm ready for this. Part of her wanted things to stay just the way they were, safe, simple, and predictable. Logan was her friend, her prayer partner, the person she called when life became overwhelming, the person who reminded her to trust God when she couldn't see any way forward. And she wasn't sure she wanted to risk losing that. Lord, maybe it's better if we're just friends, she said. For several moments, she sat quietly thinking and praying. Then she smiled to herself. Of course, if you have other plans, that's your business. Victoria shook her head and laughed softly. You know, God, you have a way of answering prayers in packages I wasn't expecting. The room felt silent again, and although she didn't have all the answers, she felt peace beginning to settle over her heart.